Last time we looked into the book of Matthew, looking into Jesus' interactions with his disciples. We talked about this moment where Jesus sees these great masses of people that didn't have people leading them. They were seeking after God, but they couldn't find the answers. And in compassion, he says to his disciples, pray that God would send out laborers to work the fields, to spread the gospel to these people. And then in the start of chapter 10, Jesus gathers the 12 disciples around him and says, basically, you are the answer to that prayer. I'm sending you out now to the people of Israel that you would proclaim the gospel, you would proclaim the truth that I have taught you. And he gives them kind of instructions on where to go and where not to go and the attitude that they're to bring with them and that kind of thing. And then he gives them this warning. And this is where we read today in chapter 10, starting in verse 16, reading from the English Standard Version, it says, Behold, I am sending you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. So be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Beware of men, for they will deliver you over to courts and flog you in their synagogues. And you will be dragged before governors and kings for my sake, to bear witness before them and the Gentiles. When they deliver you over, do not be anxious how you are to speak or what you are to say. For what you are to say will be given to you in that hour. For it is not you who speak, but the Spirit of your Father speaking through you. Brother will deliver brother over to death, and the father his child, and children will rise against parents, and have them put to death. You will be hated by all for my name's sake. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. When they persecute in one town, flee to the next. For truly I say to you, you will not have gone through all the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes. And a disciple is not above his teacher, nor a servant above his master. It is enough for the disciple to be like his teacher, and his servant his master. If they have called the master of the house Beelzebul, how much more will they malign those of his household? Continuing on in verse 26. So have no fear of them, for there is nothing that is covered that will not be revealed, or hidden that will not be known. What I tell you in the dark, say in the light. What you hear whispered, proclaim on the housetops. And do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather fear him who can destroy both the soul and body in hell. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny, and not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father? But even the hairs on your head are all numbered. Fear not, therefore, you are of more value than many sparrows. So everyone who acknowledges me before men, I will also acknowledge before my Father who is in heaven. But whoever denies me before men, I will also deny before my Father who is in heaven. And so he gives his disciples this charge right before he sends them out. And as I said before in the last video, this is actually something that we've talked about in a previous video just a couple months ago. And so if you're new to LifeSon or to our online material, you can go back a little bit and you can find that. I don't know off the top of my head what the title is, but you can explore a little bit and I'm sure you could find that. But he tells them that he's sending them out as sheep among wolves. Now that picture right there is kind of intimidating. But in reality, this whole section is intimidating to the Christian because he's saying that you are going to go through problems. You're going to go through trials. People are going to come against you. They're not going to like the message that you're saying. And here he is saying specifically to the disciples as they're going out to the people of Israel, but it does also translate to us as we go out to the rest of the world and proclaim this gospel and the truth, that the world's not going to like this. This does not line up with the ways of the world of self-love and humanism and materialism and the pursuit of joy from other things or from world religions or from the idea of coexistence of all religions and all this other stuff. The Bible doesn't line up with that. And there's this idea that you're going to be hated. But there's also this sense of fear not, for they hated Jesus and likewise they will hate us. There's another verse where it says just that. Fear not, for I have overcome the world. And he says there, that little section, it is enough for the disciple to be like his teacher and the servant like his master. If they have called the master the house of Bezalel, how much more will they malign those of his household? And see, the people, they misunderstood who Christ was. The Pharisees and the religious leaders of the day, they said that he controls demons. He calls out demons because he is a prince of demons. That he had authority over them because he was like possessed by them or something. Obviously, we know that's not the case. But the reality is that the world will misunderstand us. We're to go out anyways. Even though when we proclaim the truth of the gospel, they'll misunderstand what we're trying to say or what we're about. Be about those things anyways. Proclaim those things anyways. Because some will understand, some will hear it, and it will be able to change their heart, soften their heart, and they'll feel the call as they're called towards God and to the truth that we proclaim. There's also this fear and anxiety that we can get about, man, I don't know what to say. Public speaking is one of the greatest fears in our world. And you almost forget that as someone who speaks publicly often, that it's not normal to not be afraid of that. And so some of you're probably quite fearful of this. Now, I'm not expecting everyone to get up onto a stage and hold a microphone and proclaim the truth, but you should be able to talk to your neighbor about it. You should be able to talk to your family members and your coworkers and just people in your life. But yet, do understand that the expectation is that they will misunderstand you. That at times, that might be a severing point for that relationship. But we're to go and do that anyways. Because the reality is that although it might seem that our work has no fruit in that moment, down the road, those words and the truth that you spoke into that person's life is like tilling the soil and planting seeds and just waiting and waiting. And eventually, hopefully, their heart will become soft and they'll remember the truth that you proclaimed to them. And from that, they can turn then and have an idea of where to go and how to find God. And they might actually come back. I've seen that in my own life, and I trust many of you have seen that in your life as well. And so although we go through these challenges, although we will be hated by some, truly hated, it says to press on anyways, that we need to pursue to the end, and then we will be saved. In verse 22, and you will be hated by all for my name's sake, but the one who endures to the end will be saved. So endure. Push forward. Come around your brother and sister in Christ and allow them to encourage you and strengthen you and lift you up and remind you of why we are out there proclaiming the truth, because we know that it is truth. We know that it's important. And then he speaks to this idea of fear. That we don't need to be afraid of the world. We don't need to be concerned about that, because we stand with the one who can destroy not just the body, but the body and the soul. That it's this sense of whose opinion of you matters most. Is it your neighbor? Is it your brother? Is it your coworker or employer? Or is it the creator of all things? Is it God? Is it the one who will judge everyone and who is just and is right? To me, and to many of you, I hope, that's the opinion that matters. That's the one whose opinion and judgment on me I'm concerned about. Way more than what if anyone of this world will think of me. I want to be standing right before my God, that I will be pleasing in His sight. And so fear not the world. And he paints this picture. He says, are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny, and not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father? And then he says, but even the hairs of your head are all numbered. There's this sense of God's knowledge. And to think about that, to think that there's not a blade of grass on this earth that withers without God knowing it. That a bird, and think of the countless birds in this world. Like, we cannot count them. We have maybe a rough idea, but really there's just so many. And not one of them will fall out of its nest without God knowing it. And yet He cares for you. He loves you. He knows you. He knows the struggles you're going to go through. He knows the problems that you're going to go through. And we're not to depend on our own strength, or depend on our own head knowledge, or depend on our own wisdom, or depend on anything of us, but we depend on the strength and knowledge and wisdom and the words that we get from God. It says that we speak through His Spirit, much like Moses, when Moses had that interaction with God in the burning bush in the cave, and he basically said, but I stutter. I can't talk. And God's response was, who made your mouth? I will give you the words to speak. And so when we can truly get that, then we can understand it's not on me. It's not on my strength. It's not on my wisdom. It's not on my abilities. God takes me with my flaws, with my imperfections, with my weaknesses, and He says, I'm going to work through you. And to me, that's a comfort, and that's wonderful, and it's encouraging, and I can look at that and say, I'm willing to go out and run the race. I'm willing to go out and spread this truth. I'm willing to go out and do the work because I know that it's not by my effort, it's not by my strength or my skills, but it's God working through me. And if that's the case, if God is working through me, then I can accomplish anything. Because it's not me, it's God working through me. And to me, that's just such an encouragement. It's such an eye-opening understanding of, I'm willing to do whatever you ask of me, Lord, because I know that you're going to equip me and be with me and strengthen me and guide me. And not just me, but you also. God wants to work through you. He wants to equip you. He wants to guide you. He wants to give you the words to say and the acts of wisdom and this desire to see His work be done, to rely on His strength because He's glorified in that. And we come to understand how great He is in those moments. There's this sense that we need to acknowledge God before men. And he ends there. He says, so everyone who acknowledges me before men, I will also acknowledge before my Father who is in heaven. But whoever denies me before men, I will also deny before my Father in heaven. There's this sense of acknowledging Him is to say that regardless of what the world thinks, I will acknowledge my God. I will stand before my God. I will never denounce Him. And he says there that just this highlight of the importance that if we stand with Him, then He will stand with us. That we will be counted as righteous. We will be in that fold. We will be in the family of God. Not on anything we've done. Not on righteousness that we've obtained through our works, but through faith in Him. And He's saying, stand with me, stay faithful to me, and I will be faithful to you. What a wonderful truth that is. And so I would encourage you as you go about your living, your days, your weeks, that you would just be reminded of that. You do not go out in your own strength. You don't speak out of your own words. Don't rely on your own wisdom and guidance. But as you start your day, say to God, Lord, help me today to live for you. Give me the words to speak to people. May I have divine opportunities to speak into people's lives. And when those come up, may you give me the wisdom, guidance, discernment, and the words to say that I'll be able to make a difference in that person's life for your kingdom, for your glory. I hope that's encouraging to you today. I hope that as we look at what Jesus was teaching to His disciples, you can see the importance, value of it, and how important it is also for us as His disciples to learn from it and apply it to our lives. Have a good week and honor God in all that you do.